8 people, all desperate for money and pushed to the edge, are brought to a remote villa. Their phones are taken away. Their keys are taken away. Every exit is being watched. The host, Lambert, tells them that the final winner will receive a huge amount of money, enough to pay off their debts, enough to cover medical bills, enough to change their lives. But losing doesn't mean ordinary elimination. It means punishment. And what makes it worse is, every round gives them only 15 seconds to choose. Choose someone else to suffer, or suffer themselves. Refuse to choose, and they are eliminated. At first, some of them think this is just a rich man's twisted game, until an elderly gentleman stands up and says he doesn't want to play anymore.
You go to hell, you sick motherfucker!
Only then do they understand what elimination really means. It means death. But the most terrifying part is, the heroine, Iris, wasn't kidnapped. She walked into this place by herself. One day earlier, Iris was still at a restaurant interview. She desperately needed this job, because her younger brother was seriously ill and waiting for a bone marrow transplant. The surgery and the treatment after that were crushing her like a mountain. But she had no experience. In the end, the restaurant still turned her down. No job, no money, and no hope in sight for her brother's treatment. That is when a doctor at the hospital introduces her to a man. His name is Lambert. On the surface, he is a philanthropist, but the help he offers sounds deeply wrong. As long as Iris joins a game and wins it to the end, he can solve all of her problems. Her debt, the medical bills, her brother's surgery. None of it will be a problem anymore. Of course, Iris thinks the whole thing is absurd. Deciding who gets saved through a game doesn't sound like charity at all. But Lambert seems completely certain, because he knows when someone has been pushed to the edge, it is almost impossible to refuse the last rope that might save them. That night, Iris gets a call from the restaurant. They tell her she is not right for the job. Iris is disappointed. Now she has lost that job for good. So she takes out the contact information Lambert left behind. Then she tells her brother one more lie. The next day, Iris gets into a black sedan and is taken to the remote villa. There, she meets the other 7 contestants. An elderly woman with white hair, a compulsive gambler, a cold, elegant woman, a retired soldier, a black man, and a young white man named Lucas. They come from different backgrounds, different ages, different lives, but they all have one thing in common. Every single one of them desperately needs money. Before the game begins, the butler collects everyone's phones, keys, and personal belongings. Only then does Iris start to sense that something is wrong. But by now, leaving is no longer that easy. Lambert serves steak and foie gras, but Iris is a vegetarian. She refuses to eat meat. Lambert only smiles and tells her everything has a price. She says she doesn't have one, so Lambert tells the butler to place $10,000 in cash right on the table. If she eats the meat in front of her, the money is hers. Iris doesn't want to give in, but then she looks at the money on the table, and she thinks of her brother lying in a hospital bed. In the end, she forces down her disgust and eats it. But this isn't even the game yet. It is only Lambert's first test. He wants to prove how long a person's so-called principles can really last when money is placed right in front of them. Soon, he turns his attention to the elderly gentleman beside her. The old man has been sober for 16 years. To him, alcohol is not just a drink. It is a past he doesn't want to remember. But Lambert keeps raising the price. If he drinks an entire bottle, he will get $50,000. Tears well up in the old man's eyes. He knows this is humiliation, but he also really needs the money. In the end, he still picks up the bottle and drinks it down in one go. Lambert smiles with satisfaction, because in his eyes, the game hasn't even started yet, and these people have already lost. After a few rounds of drinks, Lambert finally announces that the real game is about to begin. He will keep giving the contestants choices to make, and every single one of them must choose. Refuse, and they are eliminated. Fail to answer within 15 seconds, and they are eliminated too. The game will continue until only one winner is left. That is when the elderly gentleman finally realizes something is wrong. He stands up and curses at Lambert, saying he doesn't want to keep playing. He just wants to take the money and leave. Lambert gives him one final warning, but the old man doesn't sit down. And that brings us back to the opening scene. Only now do they finally understand that from this moment on, no one is allowed to quit. The real game has only just begun. The butler picks up the electric shock headgear and places it on the black man and the cold, elegant woman. Lambert tells the black man to choose, shock himself, or shock the woman across from him. He has only 15 seconds. The black man hesitates. In the end, he still can't bring himself to hurt her, so he chooses to shock himself. The powerful current nearly knocks him unconscious. Everyone is worried about him. Only the cold woman starts to laugh. There is pride in that smile, and mockery too. Next, the headgear is placed on the cold woman and the white-haired elderly woman. This time, the choice is in the cold woman's hands. As soon as Lambert finishes explaining the rules, the elderly woman starts convulsing. The cold woman barely hesitates. She chooses to shock the elderly woman. After it is over, she still looks completely justified. In her eyes, everyone here is a competitor. There is no need to pretend to feel sorry for anyone. After the elderly woman finally recovers, the headgear is placed again on her and the gambler. Now the choice belongs to her. The next second, sparks flash from the gambler's head. Even this kind-looking elderly woman chooses to shock him. Lambert is very pleased with what he sees. At the same time, the doctor who introduced Iris to Lambert opens his drawer and takes out a handgun. He tucks it into his waistband, then gets in his car and drives away. No one knows where he is going. Back at Lambert's villa, the game is still going on. The headgear is placed on the retired soldier and Lucas. The soldier chooses to shock Lucas. Then, the headgear is placed again on Lucas and Iris. This time, the choice is in Lucas's hands. Lucas chooses to shock himself. When Lambert and the cold woman see this, they both give an amused look, as if they are watching a fool. Next, the headgear is placed on Iris and the black man. Iris is terrified. She sees that Lucas has already been shocked until he can barely think straight. The black man tries to comfort her. He tells her not to feel guilty. He says he is ready to take it again. But Iris, still too kind to hurt him, chooses to shock herself. Lambert and the cold woman both look disappointed. In their eyes, this choice is unbelievably stupid. The game is so simple, yet Iris still hasn't learned the lesson, because to them, kindness only makes a person lose faster. After the first round ends, Lambert gives everyone a short break. The group starts discussing how they might escape. That is when Lambert's son, Julian, walks into the room. He loudly mocks the contestants. The look on his face seems to say that since they came here begging for help, they should just shut up and obey. The retired soldier badly wants to punch him, but in the end, he holds himself back. Julian then orders the staff to prepare the next round. While all this is happening, the doctor has already driven to the outside of the villa. With the gun on him, he climbs over the wall and sneaks inside. Back in the room, after Julian leaves, the group continues discussing an escape plan. But their plan does not include the cold woman. This selfish and cold-blooded woman has already been pushed out by the others. The break ends. Lambert walks back into the room. He announces that the next round is about to begin. This time, each person has 30 seconds to choose. The game starts with Iris. She can either stab Lucas in the thigh with an awl, or whip the retired soldier 3 times as hard as she can. The soldier doesn't want to make this harder for her, so he takes off his shirt and offers himself for the whipping. After 3 lashes, it is Lucas's turn to choose. He can either whip the soldier or stab Iris. Because stabbing someone is too dangerous, the soldier once again steps forward and takes 3 lashes himself. Then, the choice falls to the soldier, but Lambert changes his options. He can either stab Lucas or let the butler whip him 3 more times. The soldier chooses to take the lashes himself again. By the time it is over, his back is covered in bloody welts. At the same time, the doctor is moving closer to the room with the gun in his hand. But the game does not stop. Now, it is the gambler's turn to choose. He can either whip the soldier or stab the white-haired elderly woman. The gambler may look brutal, but he still has one line he refuses to cross. He says he doesn't want to stab a woman, especially an elderly woman, but he also knows the soldier is already badly injured. If he takes any more lashes, he might die, and the elderly woman is already paralyzed. So in his mind, one stab might not make things that much worse. In the end, the gambler stabs the elderly woman, but the stab hits an artery. Blood immediately starts pouring out. The gambler panics and tries to stop the bleeding. Luckily, Lucas knows a little about medicine. He barely manages to slow the bleeding down. Otherwise, the elderly woman could have died right there. Even then, the game still continues. The choice now falls to the elderly woman. She can either stab the cold woman or keep whipping the soldier. The elderly woman doesn't hesitate. She stabs the cold woman. The moment the blade goes in, the cold woman swings her fist and punches the elderly woman. Her viciousness is so extreme that even Lambert looks surprised. So when it is the cold woman's turn to choose, Lambert changes the options again. She can either whip the soldier or use the awl to stab anyone in the room anywhere below the shoulders. The cold woman takes the awl and walks behind Iris. Then she drives it straight into her stomach. She has never liked Iris, and she hates that this woman keeps being protected by everyone else. This stab shocks even Lambert once again, but Julian laughs with delight. Iris is in so much pain she can't even speak. Luckily, the wound misses anything vital. Meanwhile, the retired soldier has already collapsed unconscious on the floor. Now, it is the black man's turn to choose. He can either stab Lucas or keep whipping the soldier. After struggling with the decision, the black man chooses to whip the soldier. After 3 more lashes, the soldier is barely alive. At the same time, the white-haired elderly woman also dies from the blood loss and the shock of everything that has happened. The gambler is overwhelmed with guilt. Lambert orders his men to carry out the elderly woman and the soldier. Then he prepares to begin the next round. Just then, Lucas, the black man, and the gambler suddenly fight back. They try to escape, or more accurately, they are trying to cover Iris so she can get away. In the chaos, the terrified Julian crawls under the table. The cold woman stays standing beside the table. With the 3 men covering her, Iris rushes out of the room. But the next second, a gunshot rings out. The black man is shot down by Lambert. Lucas and the gambler are forced back into their seats at gunpoint. The situation is brought back under control. Julian is completely shaken, so he makes an excuse and leaves the room. At this moment, Iris is desperately trying to escape from the butler. She runs to a window, ready to climb out, but Julian happens to come out and spots her. He grabs Iris and is about to hurt her. Iris bites him hard. While he is in pain, she grabs the awl and stabs it into his thigh. Julian screams in agony. Both the butler and the doctor who has broken into the villa hear the noise and rush over. The doctor gets there first. He points his gun at Iris and tells her to leave with him. But he isn't there to hurt her. He's there because he can't live with the guilt anymore. He wants to stop this game from going any further. But before he can finish speaking, the butler appears behind him and shoots him in the head. The doctor dies on the spot. Iris is captured again and taken back to the room. After the butler tells Lambert everything that happened, Lambert first goes to check on his son. When he comes back, he actually apologizes to Iris. A man who kills without blinking is now apologizing to the woman who stabbed his son. The cold woman can't accept this at all. She wants Iris dead right now, but Lambert immediately shuts her down. The game continues. By this point, only 4 players are left in the room: Lucas, the gambler, Iris, and the cold woman. Lambert announces the new rules. In front of each of the 4 players is a card. On the back is an unknown punishment. Some punishments are extremely severe, others are relatively lighter. They have 2 choices: flip the card and accept the unknown punishment inside, or put their head into a bucket of water for 2 minutes. They have 30 seconds to decide. The game starts with the gambler. He knows gambling better than anyone, and in his eyes, this game is really a psychological battle. After weighing his options, he chooses to flip the card. The punishment on the card is to light a firecracker in his hand. The gambler gives a look as if he saw this coming. In his eyes, this doesn't seem too serious. But when the butler brings out the so-called firecracker, he freezes. That thing is as thick as a pipe. It is nothing like a normal firecracker. The butler forces it into his hand and lights it. Then comes a massive blast. The gambler's fingers are blown off. He stares with his eyes wide open. Then, his body goes stiff and he collapses. The gambler has a heart condition. He doesn't die from the blast. He is literally scared to death. Lambert stomps his foot, as if the show ended too soon. Then he orders his men to drag the gambler out, and the game continues. Now it is Lucas's turn to choose. Flip the card, or hold his head underwater for 2 minutes. Lucas doesn't think he can survive 2 minutes underwater, so he chooses to flip the card. And his punishment is to blind himself in one eye. With a gun pointed at him, Lucas has no choice but to pick up the razor. Then he cuts into one of his own eyes and blinds himself. Then, it is Iris's turn to choose. She chooses to put her head underwater for 2 minutes. Second by second, time passes. She becomes more and more desperate. She starts struggling with everything she has, but the butler's hand keeps pressing her down. Just when Iris is about to break, she thinks of her younger brother. If she dies here, what will happen to him? Holding on to that one thought, she forces herself to last until the end. She doesn't drown. Even Lambert can't help but admire her. Then, Lambert smiles and asks the cold woman if she can last 2 minutes underwater. The cold woman is terrified of water, because her little daughter died by drowning, so she chooses to flip the card. But fate plays a cruel joke on her. Her punishment is to stay underwater for 4 minutes. That is almost impossible. In pain and desperate struggle, the cold woman eventually dies. At this point, only 2 players are left in the game: Lucas and Iris. The final round begins. Lambert flips a coin to decide who gets to choose first. This time, luck is on Iris's side. The choice falls to her. She has 2 options. First, she and Lucas can both leave alive, but she gets none of the help she was promised. Second, she can shoot Lucas dead and receive all of it: the money, the medical bills, her brother's surgery. When Lucas hears this, he thinks he still has a chance to survive, because during the game, he helped Iris more than once. He believes if he can just talk to her, they can both make it home alive. But before he can finish, a gunshot rings out. Iris shoots Lucas dead. Lambert and the butler clap with joy, because the game finally has a winner, and that winner is Iris. But Iris breaks down and sobs in pain. Still, not long after, she gets everything she came here for. Her brother's treatment has already been arranged. Her debts and tuition can now be paid off. Iris staggers into the car that will take her back. On the way back, images from the game keep flashing through her mind. Those ugly faces, those painful struggles, those cold deaths. But at least all of this will soon be over. With this money, her brother will finally get better. After returning home, Iris changes out of her blood-stained clothes. Then she takes a shower. After that, she goes to her brother's room to wake him up. But when she opens the door, she finds that her brother has already taken pills and killed himself. He didn't want to keep being a burden to his sister. He wanted Iris to have a life of her own. His death makes everything Iris sacrificed lose its meaning in an instant. And from that day on, the world has one more sister who can never make peace with reality again. And that is where the movie ends. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to subscribe to Traplix Cinema for more dark thrillers, survival games, and shocking movie endings. Click the next video, and I'll see you in another nightmare.